Good morning and welcome to Coffee with the Pastors. It's so good to be with all of you. This is our opportunity once a month to get to, as we often say, get the inside scoop on what's going on in church, but perhaps even more importantly, to have an opportunity to just listen in on some of the conversations that we have as pastors about things that are going on in our lives and in the lives of the church and in the lives of all of you who are joining us. So welcome to everyone. You can grab your cup of coffee or your beverage of whatever you enjoy, and we're going to get right to it, I think, with a number of things that are coming up real quickly. So maybe like the announcement portion real quickly before we get to some bigger conversation. But something that's happening here in July is we are privileged to have a guest preacher. Dan Rift from ELCA is going to be coming to be with us. So Pastor Dan, do you want to tell us more about that?
Yes, so we've been talking a lot about this in worship the last few weekends. One of the big pieces of the 150th anniversary celebration is this special challenge offering that we have set a goal of $15,000 to be divided between two projects. One of them is with ELCA World Hunger, a program that the acronym is EPES, and it basically means popular education. And that's a project in Chile that's about wellness and wholeness and mental health in particular. And that was one of the reasons that we chose that project. We thought it fit well with Trinity's emphasis the last few years on faith and wellness, and particularly around mental health. And so Dan Rift, Reverend Dan Rift, who is the director of ELCA World Hunger and Disaster Response, is going to be with us on July 24th and 25th to preach and share more about that project. We did a video a couple weeks ago in worship to introduce a little bit about that project to people, and this will be another step on that, to be just deepening our understanding of what that's all about. Dan will also be doing a short presentation after the 5 o'clock Saturday service on July 24th in the fellowship hall. So we'll have coffee and cookies and people that want to come down and learn more, see some pictures, that kind of thing. That's going to happen after the Saturday evening service. So that's a really exciting thing coming up here. Chance to, again, be servant church in some places beyond even our own community. The other half of that anniversary celebration challenge offering, though, of course, is the local build this summer for Habitat of Humanity here in North Iowa. And I think, Kevin, you know a little bit more about that.
Yeah, on August 1st, the director for Habitat for Humanity in North Central Iowa is Melissa Schoenberg is going to be here at our outdoor worship to bring a greeting and talk a little bit about some volunteer opportunities that'll be coming up later this summer and into the fall. Before that, on July 31st, they're sponsoring the Women's Build. And they'll be actually building some stuff over in the parking lot for the family, for the Alberto family. But they'll be building over in the parking lot of the Habitat for Humanity offices and at Restore. And they've asked us to have a team of at least 7 women that would be willing to go. And so there's information that's going to be on the website, our website, and in our e-news going out. To a link to sign up for that and be a part of it. And I think that's going to be some good opportunities coming up, not just to build, but to do other volunteer things, provide food and refreshments for people, and there's cleanup. And Melissa's going to help explain all of that.
We have so many connections to Habitat in our congregation. This has been really fun to do. It's been a number of years since we did a project just with Habitat. And so that's kind of cool to be able to focus on that and renew some of those. Well, we've had folks that have been working really directly with them for a long time in our congregation on the board. You're on the board, right, Kevin?
I think, yeah, there's like 5 or 6 Trinity people on the board.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's an important partner ministry locally here.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm curious to learn more about both of those projects because I think they're important, and also I think coming out of the pandemic, I mean, all of our partners have been struggling as well. And so to renew those partnerships, to strengthen them, and as you said, Pastor Dan, just continue to be the servant church locally and beyond is is our identity and how we carry this mission forward. So it's exciting times. Yeah. You know, there's also some things that we used to do that we'll be doing in August from my perspective, where we used to do what we call the senior summer luncheon. We're going to do that instead as a coffee hour coming up for everybody who's 85 or older to come into the church if they haven't before and see the church and have some fellowship. And we've got a new sermon series coming up the beginning of August that I think it's going to be fun to preach on. I said it to the Bible study group, you know, it's entitled Love the Sinner, Hate the Cliche. And catchy title, I think, but also I think because, you know, it's some of those common phrases that we use of cliches like, you know, God doesn't give you more than you can handle kind of thing. And is that biblical? Do we really mean that? And so I think that'll be a fun thing for us to dig into as preachers. I've also put together a small group Bible study pamphlet that's going to be available online as well as in print for anybody who wants to pick it up and could do it with friends or neighbors or family members. And I'm going to do Women, Word, and Wine again at my home on the Mondays before the sermon gets preached on. We're going to gather together as women with lemonade or water or wine and discuss these cliches and what we think about them. So that, you know, is another thing that people can be looking for and engaging in. And then we're going to have a women's Bible study. The women of Trinity used to do a summer potluck picnic with Bible study around the Gather magazine, and we'll be doing that the second week of August for folks, and having a women's Bible study. So number of things for people to be looking for. I said to somebody, I think I'm going back to my Scandinavian roots of a smorgasbord, as we're looking at ways for people to engage coming out of the pandemic. We're laying out the smorgasbord and inviting people to sample some of the things they've done before, sample some new things, sample things within the church, sample some opportunities outside of the church to serve. So hope people will take advantage of it and be a part of it. It does feel strange to have all these things happening. Oh boy. And speaking quite honestly of God won't give you more than you can handle, and a lot of things happening. I don't know about you, but I was thinking when we got together for this one, that the last time of Coffee with the Pastors, I was like in this zone of Kevin's going to be the bishop, and I don't even know, and I don't even know what I said in that, but here we are a month later, and Kevin's going to be the bishop, and we are living in some exciting times. So I think really what people want to hear about is, you know, what are you learning about being a bishop, Kevin?
I'm learning that there is a lot to learn about being a bishop. Yeah, you know, I knew there was going to be a lot of things that are different, but last week I had what's called Bishop Formation 1, a group of other bishops from the Conference of Bishops. 7 or 8 of them are on a committee, and every year the new crop of bishops comes in. There were 7 of us this year, and they do training for us. And so I had 2.5 days of online Zoom training that one of them described as like drinking from a fire hose. It was a lot. I have pages and pages of notes, but really good. I think really good. There's been some changes in the ELCA and the ELCA structure, and I think some shifts in how, not just how we're organized, but kind of shifts in how we see ourselves as a church and how we work as a church at 3 different levels: the church-wide level, synodical level, and then congregational level. And that's been work that's been going on for several years. I think Pastor Dan was on that future directions table as part of those conversations. So some really, I think, impressive and exciting changes that are going to be good for people and congregations across the ELCA. So yeah, just learning who to call when I have questions. And I even have a mentor bishop. My mentor bishop is Daniel Bowden from Ohio. And I don't remember which Ohio synod. So if he's watching, I'm sorry, Daniel. But yeah, he checks in with me, prays with me. You know, just they're really good about making sure that the new bishops have all the tools that we need to do this. And aside from that, it's been meeting a lot of new people, setting up meetings, people who want to talk, partners in ministry, with opportunities for the synod and for congregations. And yeah, it's a lot.
Yeah.
A lot.
What's your time frame for this transition?
Well, time frame is I'm kind of doing both a bishop-elect. I'm not the bishop yet, so it's bishop-elect stuff right now, kind of some transition things, but then also finishing up a lot of loose ends here, tying up some things that need to be finished. My last Sunday will be August 15th, and I'll be preaching that day. And then actually start as the bishop the week of September 1st.
Okay.
So we'll be doing that. But yeah, and I've talked to a few people. Amy and I are not moving to Waverly right away. We're going to stick around Mason City. Amy, for her work with Iowa State Extension, covers 13 counties to the west of Mason City, and I'll cover 23 counties to the east of Mason City. So this will be a good spot for us. And I'll be able to commute down to Waverly several days a week. I'll also be able to work remotely. That's one of the great things we learned in the last year and a half, is how possible that is, and kind of got it real practice. But also be doing a lot of traveling around the synod, and doing extra work on behalf of the whole ELCA too, learning that. There's a lot of stuff the bishops do on behalf of the whole church. So that's kind of the timeline right now. Yeah, and so we're working on just some of those transition things happening here. I know, Dan, you've talked to Bishop Andrea, the interim bishop, about the call process already.
Yeah, our sense is we really, in the past, we have used interim pastors. The last couple of pastoral transitions that we did, we used interim pastors really successfully, I think. I think that those were the right moves for us at that time. At this point, I don't think that that's the route we want to go with this transition. I think our sense is that we really would like to get moving on the call process as quickly as possible, and that's been confirmed by Bishop Andrea. I know in talking with you as well, as you move into that role, that you've kind of affirmed that too. And so we are moving quickly to form a call committee and to have those initial meetings with Bishop Andrea and other synod staff to get that process going. We're also talking about the associate pastor roles, and we talked about this at the semi-annual meeting a few weeks ago about wanting to really rethink the way we label those roles. Trinity, for a long time, the associate roles have been really defined around age groups: pastor to senior adults, pastor to youth, or youth, family, and education. And we really want to think about that carefully and say, is that really what these people are doing? You know, is that still the way that those roles are being defined? And I think a lot of us, I know, you know, in our conversations, we feel like maybe that's not the most accurate descriptor of what's already happening, and certainly looking ahead at some of the future strategic goals of Trinity. I don't know if those are the right labels. So we're gonna be talking about those and maybe rethinking those a little bit. Now's a perfect time to do that as you head into a transition like this, to take a look at those titles. So may not actually change what those folks are doing all that much right away, but just more kind of align the titles with what's really happening. So we're doing some of that work here in the next few weeks, and obviously we'll be engaging the congregation as we always do in call processes. There's the need to make sure we're defining that pastoral role using the discernment of the people, and so council will be facilitating some of that here in the coming weeks. But we hope to move quickly with it so that we can have someone in your role, Kevin, here pretty quickly, as quickly as you can. You know, never really being able to control that in the call process, but so that's kind of exciting. And in the meantime, I think, you know, a lot of people say, well, how are we going to cover those ministries that you have been so involved with, which is another thing we talked about, a semi-annual a little bit, but just to lift it up again for those that maybe weren't a part of that meeting. Our short-term goal is to find, to use some of the great talent that we have in our congregation, particularly retired pastors and folks with preaching and teaching skills, to use those people to step in and do some preaching on the preaching schedule to help Kathy and I keep a fairly typical routine, knowing there'll be other things we're picking up in this time, and then working again with some of the talent in our congregation, I think, to make sure that confirmation and high school youth and some of those things are also being attended to. So should be a really neat moment, as these kind of things are in congregations, no matter what size they are, to allow some folks to step up out of the congregation and do some ministry short term. Can be really good, really healthy, as we are carrying out some of these searches for staff positions. And there are some other searches going on in the midst of this, particularly in the youth area, right?
Yeah. I think at the semi-annual meeting, you know, I had just learned a couple days before that, just a couple days before that annual meeting, semi-annual meeting, we had interviewed a fantastic candidate for our high school youth and young adult position. And we're very excited about it. In discernment, they decided that they were called to stay in their current ministry setting, which is a good thing to discern, even though we were disappointed that they're not coming here. But since then, we've had some people in the congregation make some really kind of neat suggestions to us about some other possibilities within the church, and we're kind of starting to run those down and investigate those. And so what we're doing is right now we're going ahead with posting our middle school position. So we are looking for someone to help with confirmation, you know, help pastor with confirmation and just small groups and kind of doing the administration part of that, and someone who'd be able to be here on Wednesday evenings and Sunday mornings quite often. And that's a 10-hour-a-week job, and it's being sponsored by a gift from a family here at Trinity. That gift will be paying for that position for several years. And so we're really thankful for that, as that's coming together. And so hopefully we'll have somebody in place. And then the other piece is right around our high school. You know, who's going to take care of the high school students? And we're probably going to depend on some of the talented and dedicated people here at Trinity to do that. You know, next year in 2022 is the ELCA Youth Gathering up in Minneapolis. And usually then that becomes kind of our youth program for the year, is preparation for going on that trip. That actually ends up starting in September, and probably in August, we'll start reaching out to families and kids to see who's interested, because I think registration actually happens in September sometime. But we'll be looking for some additional chaperones. We've got one already, and looking for some additional chaperones to help with that, and maybe someone to help kind of administrate just getting people signed up and registered, and get some transportation stuff lined up. But I imagine there's someone in the congregation that has that time and is feeling called or is willing to help out with that with the kids. And so we're part of my transition is to kind of get that interim plan in place here before the middle of August, as much as possible. So if anybody's interested, or someone that's going to be good at any one of those things, give me a call and I'll be happy to reach out and share that other people see gifts in them around this. So
Absolutely.
Yeah. There's a lot happening, isn't there? Yeah. I was really struck, Kevin, when you were talking about the bishop formation and the denomination, and you said something like shifts in how we see ourselves, and you were talking about basically the ELCA, but I was thought, well, isn't that really what is happening here? At all levels of, there's shifts in the denomination, but there's shifts in how we are seeing our roles. And not that they're huge changes, but just perspective and how we see ourselves. And then I was thinking about talking about the richness that we have of talent in our congregation, and that shift of how do we see ourselves as staff. It's really not that we have to do it all, but it's empowering and utilizing the gifts of all the people, which then means that maybe there's a little shift in how they are seeing themselves in their roles in church. And so it can feel like things are moving and changing, but at the same time, I think this is really exciting work that is happening, that it has its own kind of life and formation in faith and service that can be really beneficial for all of those different levels, right? The denomination, the local church, us as individuals. I don't know if you're sensing that, but I guess as I was listening to all of that, that was what was coming to me.
Yeah, I would certainly say that. It's this, the transition has been very different in terms of when I've taken new calls before. I've had months to get ready for that transition, mentally, spiritually, emotionally, because I've been out interviewing or doing things like that. And then the time that it takes once you start interviewing at a church until they can get to a call, a congregational meeting and extend a call. I mean, there's literally at least 6 weeks, if not months, where you kind of are getting ready for that. This call came very quickly. I mean, there were no interviews and there weren't those, oh, this really could be a possibility. I've been thinking about it and, feeling to be in the process, but yeah, it was a quick shift, a very quick shift.
Bishop's elections do that, right?
Yeah.
Fast.
Yeah.
Wake up one morning and one call, and by the end of the day, you have another.
Yeah. But in that process, though, I've been, I'm very excited for Trinity. I really am. And I think, as hard as it is for me to leave and not be a part of the staff and the day-to-day ministry and things that are going on here, I'm really excited, that some new people are going to step in and really help, I think, take Trinity the next step, to where the Spirit is calling and leading. And so I'm not bummed out that I don't get to be here, because as bishop, I get to be here with you in a different way. I get to cheer you on and be a resource for the congregation. I think we've been talking about some of this stuff for a while, and I know, you've talked about how, now we don't have to go convince the bishop that this is it, because I've been part of the conversations for months now about where you guys feel, and we feel that the Spirit is leading Trinity. So I'm excited, and just aware that it's kind of all up in the air right now. But I think the Spirit is already working at people to start preparing them to be here, to call. And that's why even when we didn't have someone immediately for the youth and young adult position, I'm confident that the right person is getting lined up and being prepared. So not dismal, not concerned, but just excited to see where and when and who that's all going to play out.
Yeah, it's really a vibrant, life-giving time right now. In the midst of it all, you just sense that there's new life that is happening all around us. And that isn't always clear, and it doesn't always feel good, but yet it's exciting at the same time. Yeah, for sure. Go ahead, Dan.
No, go ahead.
I'm still mulling over something that happened last week, and I mentioned this on Sunday as well. But in the Bible study that I led recently, I was talking about success and how we define success, both as individuals and as congregations, as a country. And, I had a bunch of men, I had a bunch of women. We went through all of this, and then about midway through the women's Bible study, I kind of circled back around to that. And one of the women started to laugh. And what she said is, we all talked about success, but not one of us said that success is knowing that you're a child of God. Isn't that, there's so many measures, there's so many things that are going on. And yet when you really come down to it, what is it that we really have to hang on to and celebrate as success? I mean, that we're loved and we're redeemed. And if we've got that, the Holy Spirit is going to keep doing the Holy Spirit thing. But we have success, and we'll, not to say we won't make mistakes and there won't be things that go wrong, but we have that sure foundation at the same time. And I really am sensing that in this time as we move forward and have the right people in the right places, and the right people coming on, being prepared to come on board with us.
It's beautifully said. And I think, to go back to what Kevin was talking about with shifts in the denomination, I think that's one of the things that the ELCA at the macro level has been kind of waking up to and realizing is in changing times, and when culture is shifting, like it has been here since probably the mid 60s. If we really look at the numbers of, engagement and dollars to mission support and those kinds of things, most of the mainline churches really started to change around 1965, which often surprises us, because I think a lot of us kind of believe that it's just been the last decade or two that churches have changed, but that really isn't true. And in the midst of that, it's sort of like you can continue to just try to do things better or work harder to try to get back to what it looked like in 1965 when we came to church, however you define that, right? Or you can ask that much more important question of, what is it that we are really here for? What is it that God has gathered us as a community of faith in this place for in this moment? And if you focus on that question, right, we all know that actually leads you to the place that you need to be. and the other things sort of take care of themselves. And I think that's beautifully said. Are we asking the question, how are we helping people know the grace and love of God and really trust in that and deepen their trust in that as they go through their life? How are we helping children know the God that has claimed them and named them in baptism? How well are we doing that? I think that's a much more intriguing question than, well, how many people did we have in the sanctuary this year compared to 10 years ago? I mean, those numbers matter, and those numbers can be helpful, but they're not the ultimate measurement. And I think that's where we sometimes get a little sideways with that we forget what our real mission is about. And so I think that's exactly right. I think the more we can lean into those questions and think about that as a church, we're gonna be faithful, which is the most important thing, no matter what comes. And I think you can do that as a big church. You can ask those questions. You can ask those questions as small churches that maybe feel like they're about to close their doors. It's still about just being faithful, right? And trying to help people to know the love and mercy of God in Christ. So I agree. I think that's the exciting part as we think about all the changes in the church, the changes the pandemic brought on, the changes in staffing. I think if we stick to those kind of questions, we're going to probably land in an even more exciting place than we're in now.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And it won't look like it did in 1960, and that's okay, because we don't want it to. That we're always growing and changing, and that's
one of the gifts of an anniversary year, right? Is we're reviewing this 150-year history of just our own congregation. It never ceases to amaze me how much this one congregation has changed in the way that they are church over the last 150 years. I mean, 1965 looked so different here than 1930 did. And 1930 looks so different from 1900. When you go back and look at the history, it's amazing how consistent change has been in this congregation's life. But again, I don't, a lot of us don't live long enough to get that perspective. So
right. It's ironic you bring that up, because I just had a request last week for the confirmation picture of the 1967 confirmation, the largest confirmation class at Trinity ever. And I was looking at that picture, and it's like, and that's lovely, but to your point, are all those folks living in Jesus, and how are they living that life of faith now? And what does that mean? And it's not to say anything against what was being done in the 60s, but just that the continued mission of creating disciples is really what we've always been about, from, the New Testament to forward for generations to come, if you will. And somebody in church, when Kevin announced that he had a new call to bishop, they just rolled their eyes at me and they just said, well, we've done this before. We know how to do this. We'll be fine. And I thought, yeah, you're right. And there was a wonderful perspective of saying, change happens, transitions happen, but God is faithful. And we hopefully are faithful through it all. And that's the calling, right? To be faithful in the midst of it.
Well, it's always better too when you have staff transitions and somebody's leaving that people are sad about it, right? I mean, that's a good sign.
It's better than the alternative.
It's better than the alternative, so I'll take that every day of the week, that people go, oh my goodness, Pastor Kevin's leaving. We're going to lose this, and how are we ever? That's exactly what you want.
Well, there's probably a couple people that are cheering, but they're not going to say it out loud.
Yeah. But I think that's been going on for a while here too, in the transitions just that I've seen in 11 years. I know you have, Kathy, and I think that's been a really positive sign too of this congregation's life and health, that there's been a lot of sadness over those transitions, which says, man, we've had some good leadership too. So that's awesome.
Yeah. Well, speaking of good leadership, I want to thank you for being the good leaders that you are in this congregation and ministry. And we know that we have many leaders in our congregation in a variety of different ways, and that we are doing this together in this time. So good discussion, and thanks for being with us. Anybody have any last words for our folks, or last sips of coffee before we
save the date, September 25th. September 25th, that Saturday, is the installation service for our new bishop here at Trinity. And it is going to be a blowout service, because not only is it going to be really the synod service that we've been invited to host, which is a huge honor at Trinity, but it will include Bishop Elizabeth Eaton as our preacher, and the installing bishop, our national bishop, which is really exciting to have her at Trinity, have her here for that. The Wartburg College Choir will be here to help lead and participate in that service, 80 strong, which we're still trying to figure out where we're going to put them in the chancel, but we'll have that figured out by September. And then just all kinds of participation from across the Synod as we install this new bishop. So that's going to be really fun. It's 2:00 on that Saturday, the 25th, open to everybody and anybody who wants to come. We're expecting a pretty full house and making plans for overflow and that kind of thing. We're also going to live stream that service. So put that on your calendar if you are somebody who is interested in those kind of things. This should be just a really exciting day and a great worship service. So.
Yeah, wonderful. Well, that's a great segue for stay tuned for more next month with Coffee with the Pastors. So thanks for being with us, and God's blessings to all of you.
Thanks. Bye-bye, you guys.
Bye.